around the time of the when the recently ended campaign began, and it's sort of my chronicles of that period. I've been doing it about 2 years, and intend to stop pretty soon. If I already haven't, actually, I don't know. It's hard to say. Anyway, it's all called Abhorrences. And, that's just like making abhorrent a noun and then pluralizing it, which is what I take the condition presently to be practically everywhere. And they're all called abhorrences, but they also have individual titles, some of them, most of them. And they're a kind of commentaries on the times. They're very topical, and some of them are quite fugitive. When it comes time to collect them, I'll throw a lot of them away. But I won't do that until I have to. I don't think there's really much I can say about them because they're just very straight, rhetorically. They're very straight. And there's not much. I mean, it's a fairly low-level terrain, but the linguistic activity is can be fairly intense. I'll start out with an example, a totally wayward example, which is not rhetorical at all, from the first debate, in which what can only be described as a vocabularial desperation was so intense, and it was almost like a drowning person. And the word that was the straw that was finally grasped was a word which turned out to be extremely unexpected. To wit, progressivity. And so, because I never watch television without also writing at the same time, because I get intensely offended when a dumb instrument wastes my time. I just sort of took it from there, and this came out. It's called "Here I Go Again." Progressivity, assassinality, invaditude, overthrowism, freedomness, oligarcharianism, contra-mentality, right-wing to life, misagoggery, helicoptery, demabuggery, place kickery, Air Force Oneery, gunship-aside, landslide-aside, countryside, riverside, avalanchery, strong-armissimo, platinum blondage, pudendemony, grand old goolikins, nuclear subbery, happy slappery, field ghouls, gaslitudes, high noonism, reabortionment, ass kickery, bushery, artillery. And that's more of that. But I haven't actually figured out how to end that one yet. And if it sticks around, I'll have to in the end. And here's another one which is like similar to that, and it's mental operations, I suppose. A lot, I think of this kind of thing as dictionary making and the sort of thing one is tempted to do when words seem inadequate. But words only ever seem inadequate, of course, at times when they're being perversely proliferated. And that's certainly true now. A very dear friend, Richard Bradigan, died not too long ago in extremely sordid and sensational circumstances. And I thought about it for a while, and I thought that he was certainly correct. But nevertheless, certain people will miss him. Anyway, I kind of, in order to relieve myself, in a sense, wrote this little kind of word play as an obit, and it's called "There's Only One Natural Death, and even that's bedside." For the post-mortem amusement of Richard Bradigan. Death by overseasoning, herbicide. Death by annoyance, pesticide. Death by suffocation, carbon monoxide. Death by burning, fireside. Death by falling, cliffside. Death by hiking, trailside. Death by camping, campside. Death by drowning, riverside, lakeside, oceanside. Death from puking, curbside. Death from boredom, hearthside. Death at the hands of the medical profession, dockside. Death from an overnight stay, inside. Death by surprise, backside. Death by blow to the head, upside. Death from delirious voting, right side. Death from hounding, left side. Death through war, their side and our side. Death by penalty, offside. Death following a decision, decide. Now, and then this one is closer to home, and it's really just the sort of thing that might. These are all very, very simple things. I just like looking out the window sometimes. Like this is an example of that. It's called Hard Boudoir, which is a code name I use for Boulder. All those joggers thumping by are turning my air anaerobic with their heavy breathing. And when they get home, they use my water by showering excessively. And then they turn on their sprinklers. But the final insult is what they do to the quality of my air when they get into their sobs and drive off to an evening of snorting entertainment. Kansas City collapse. In any rational government, responsible or otherwise, doctors and lawyers, and especially engineers, would be made liable for the crimes they commit. But instead, everybody jumps on high school teachers, as if they were the sole and only goats for failing to teach Johnny when Johnny is a jerk by preference. A lot of these are just pure crankism, of course. This one's called "Where's the Pork?" I have a hard time understanding why, since their motives are based on self-interest, non-smokers are so vindictive about smokers. It seems to me their self-interest would dictate an encouragement of smokers smoking so that the lives of the smokers would be foreshortened and result in non-smokers inheriting the space and resources thus vacated and unused. It could be anyone. It could be anyone. It is total nonsense that if it looks like a duck, walks like a duck, talks like a duck, swims like a duck, fucks like a duck, it is a duck. It could be the guy next door. Tuesday was a fait accompli, not a raison d'etre. My friend George has a theory that the handlers can prop old Rawhide up for 2 years and a day, declare him unfit, then butchery until January 1997. All in conformity with the Roosevelt rule. That's a bit pessimistic for my taste. So I argued the real precedents were Wilson and Harding, to wit, drooling, collapse, and senility, where the wife bluffs it out. Nancy would certainly consent to that. But again, as George pointed out, in those prior examples, there was still an interest in maintaining the honor of the office, whereas now ideology is all. You know, the reason why I'm kind of hunting and pecking around these is because they don't have any order really yet. Flatland. People make a lot of fun of the flat earthers, but the fact is, in a lot of places, the earth is flat. I suppose some of these were on the telephone. Like homage to Karen Carpenter, for instance. Yeah, well, these times are medieval. Smoke and Cinders, was that on the telephone? Okay. Smoke and Cinders, some thoughts on the truckers. Every time I hear the dispatches of shock and dismay over the violence of labor, it's clear who owns the radio. Capitalism was founded on cracked heads and broken ribs and machine gunning. No need to invoke Ludlow. No need to bring up Homestead. The violence is too widespread to be symbolized by one or two situations, past or present. And capitalism, from such barbarity, has come to be sanctified most by those who deplore the violence of labor. I wonder, do they have some other model for the brutes? Worldview solipsized. The ecologists now say, creatures are eligible for survival if they have no inbuilt yin for human flesh. That's a legitimate, self-interested position. But it would have no standing among the insects. Not so hardwired, but something to do. Recusants who never wrote a damn line in their smug lives, or even divided a pie, or if they had a thought, couldn't get it out with a corkscrew, now regularly bathe in the gangrene glow of crosstalk and smartcom, like a herd of gall-sick cattle. Let's see, this one has no title really. It's from July 24th, 1984. It is sheer ignorance to repeat the old canard about Jefferson, the philosopher of the small farm, as though that begins and ends his character. In reality, Monroe, his neighbor, was the small farmer. He lit the fires of American manufactories with the embargo of 1808, when the leopard raked the Chesapeake broadside. American dependence on Manchester and Birmingham was reduced by 50% in 1 year. For the protection of this whole world and its contents, I have a marvelous idea of which I am sure you will all approve. We exchange presidents with the Russians. They send us their guy, and we send them Reagan. That would guarantee we didn't bomb each other, wouldn't it? In humble admiration, cannibalism is now thought to have practically disappeared and to exist only in one or two places like New Guinea or perhaps in the hills of Fiji. And of course, there are linguistic, if somewhat vegetarian, leftovers among ourselves, as in the expression, she'd be a tasty morsel, or what a tomato, and applied to the male, what a hunk. True, there is occasional, in extremis, cannibalism among upper-class Argentines downed in the Andes. It's truly a dog of a world. Every time I meet a dog owner on the street, I wonder how he would taste. This is another cannibalism. Revenge as an insufficient inducement. One could storm and take the potwallopers next door in the yellow house, cook and eat the husband in front of the wife, and then marry her, like in Fiji, to deepen the ceremony. But the man, from so many hours on the power moor, would be indigestible, and the woman, a creature of slamming car doors, is clearly detestable. Paralyzing affability. Paralyzing affability, an analysis of the Regan voice. In many respects, it is still the voice of the turtle, a distant lip smacking where no lips exist, a congestion of several inches of phlegm in the throat, suggesting honest-to-gosh wagon trains full of right-wing Mexican votes, newly drenched for the occasion. A critique of recent developments in Mesoamerica. The people wants peace, but they'll get no rest. The people want surfeit, but they will starve. The people wants legitimacy, but they will produce bastards. The tyranny of food, in honor of the cyclists pumping their way around North Boulder Park. It is not unjust, as it is often said, that athletes are sometimes the victims of terrorists. If anything, they are among the most appropriate targets, because they are the representative examples of capital aggression, right down to the very steroidal zeals which so express their bodies and their minds. On rejuvenating the hotline, judging from the foreign policy successes of the two Jefferson administrations, 1800 to 1808, the instant communications of the present period seem to have no advantage. The line, hot or not, should be abandoned altogether. The great philosopher showed, by shuttling the 6-week packet ships, you could quadruple the size of the country and avoid war by embargoing the enemy, but of course, all that strategy presupposed the now practically outrageous idea that a president could write a letter. Of decadent Californian Tories. The intention to reimpose excise taxes, in Europe called VAT, is directly counter-revolutionary. Jefferson's first and most direct attack on federalist corruption in favor of commerce was the abolition of the excise tax, and was the most definitive break with the entrenched pro-royalist power which had held sway until the Second American Revolution, beginning in the winter of 1800. If John Marshall were to wake up from his long and deservedly restless sleep, he would scream with delight at the retrenchment of democratic advances approved by a wiser population 184 years ago. This next thing is called Wait Till the Christians Hear About This. Wait till the Christians hear about this. In his effort to get prayer into the schools, President Reagan reminded us that the ancient Romans and Greeks fell when they abandoned their gods. Students needn't pray exactly. For instance, they might think for a while before school starts. If he means that, thought could get the biggest boost it's had for years. Maybe they could think about some Greek myths. What about sacrifices? Maybe they could think about the Aztecs. I wouldn't mind seeing Cap Weinberger on a spit. And I wouldn't mind at all seeing Gene Kirkpatrick's frosty heart raised to the heathen skies. All right, self-criticism. Self-criticism. I accept the present imperium for my own individual good. I have been striving to become miserly in all I think and do, so that I and those few who look to me for their protection shall not be alienated through my own selfish recalcitrance. And I will not be tempted to consider miserliness wretched in the old, aloof, and superior way which was my wont. I shall not wince or shudder at happy talk, for even as I know it is vapid and inane, still it is better that its users be spared the dark tribulations which might otherwise occupy their consciences and distract them from their self-righteousness. I promise not to consider self-righteousness in the old, aloof, and superior way which was formerly my wont. I know that abortion is wrong and should be stopped, and I shall banish from my mind the scenes of infanticide which are condoned the world over for the good of subject states. But those questions, again, I will make myself reluctant to contemplate. I will approve of genocide in Central America because it is ideologically correct and conforms with our government's policy. I approve of the reluctant delivery of food to Ethiopia's starving millions because that country has a Marxist government, and I agree that magnanimity in such a situation would be mistaken. But above all, I am in agreement with all my government does because to think otherwise would be to make of myself an enemy of the state. When concertina wire is strung along my street, I shall not object, nor will it disturb me, because I am now convinced that what I formerly took to be a restriction of my spirit is in reality for my salvation, if salvation is in my future. But even that doubt is a sign of my new humility. Thank you very much.